Chapter 2. Milo Piven steered his battered convertible through the studio gates like a man piloting his dreams toward imminent disaster. His vehicle was a relic from an era when vintage meant hasn't exploded yet. The old car lurched to a shuddering stop in front of a rows of cottages that looked like they had been transplanted from a fairy tale written by an author with a severe lack of imagination and an abundance of kudos. Milo, as always, was cheerful as a sunbeam that had overdosed on Prozac. He practically bounced out of the driver's seat, his enthusiasm seemingly unaware that it was attached to a body that was usually riddled with anxiety and nervousness. He approached the last cottage in the row. On the door was a handmade sign reading Milo Piven. Milo's professors in film school had always praised his unique vision. If only they could see him now, an office on the Dynamo lot, a door with his name on it, even if that name covered the word storage. But only Milo knew that, and Poppy, and the studio map. Spielberg started out in a broom closet too, probably. Milo burst into his office/storage closet. The space was barely big enough to house its 2 desks, and the couch had seen better days, possibly when Zemeckis was still in diapers. A small fridge hummed continuously in the corner as though it were auditioning for Dolby. At the desk closest to the door sat a vision straight out of a 1950s pin-up calendar. Platinum blonde hair cascaded over slim shoulders that could have been poured into her tight blue sweater. His assistant's ruby red lips worked furiously on what must have been her 1,000th piece of gum that morning, her jaw moving like a metronome. She was the kind of assistant who could schedule your entire life with one hand while filing her nails with the other and make both activities appear equally important. Poppy glanced up at Milo, her eyes a perfect blend of Marilyn Monroe's bedroom gaze and the dead-inside stare of a screenwriter on Total Recall, the 1990 version, obviously. "Morning, Poppy," Milo said. "Any word from Dynamo?" She shook her head so slightly it could have been mistaken for a muscle spasm, then she popped her bubble gum with a crack. That sounded like thunder. "Nope." "That's okay." His optimism was impenetrable. "I'll give them another call today. They can't ignore us forever." Poppy's responding grunt suggested otherwise. Milo made his way to his desk and narrowly avoided tripping over a stack of scripts that looked as though they had been arranged by an inebriated Jenga enthusiast. His own screenplay, The Invisible Zoo, sat atop the pile. It was a whimsical drama about a zookeeper who discovers he can see extinct animals. More than just his passion project, the script was his potential ticket out of movie purgatory. A poster on the wall behind his desk. Milo stopped to smile at it. His short film, Pulp Miracles, had caught the eye of Hollywood. The pull quote from his directorial debut read, "Tarantino's edge meets Capra's heart." It was the reason he had come to Hollywood. The reason he had his office storage closet. But now his eyes darted to the Storm of Steel 3 treatment lurking on his desk. The glossy laminated script cover was emblazoned with explosions and a grimacing action hero. It was what Dynamo wanted him to direct. But why? When The Invisible Zoo was right there, he simply had to convince them to fund it. Because the one thing Milo knew was that he couldn't trade his dreams for a paycheck. Even though in the unforgiving landscape of La La Land, sometimes selling out was the only way to avoid being priced out. Milo settled into his used director's chair. He'd left the name of Alan Smithy on the back, just as the door flew open with enough force to startle dust bunnies that had called this closest home since before Technicolor took the town from sepia to psychedelic. The space had clearly been designed by an architect who believed in challenging the laws of physics, or at least the building code. Somehow, it managed to be simultaneously too small for 2 people and too big for one, existing in a dimensional sweet spot that defied explanation. The door didn't just open. It surrendered, as if knowing better than to stand between a Hollywood executive and his next potential franchise. Then Archibald Harrington strode into the room. He was the living embodiment of a Hollywood executive, a portly cigar-chomping man who had seen it all, heard it all, and could still spin it into a 3-picture deal. Milo leapt to his feet. "Mr. Harrington!" His voice hit a pitch usually reserved for dog whistles. Another sharp crack split the air when Poppy's bubblegum expanded and contracted. Harrington surveyed the room with the air of a man wondering how he had managed to find himself in a storage closet. "Piven," he said, his voice a gravelly mix of too many cigars and not enough patience. "Thought about my offer?" Milo's smile faltered, but only for a microsecond, before reasserting itself. "I'm flattered by the offer to direct Storm of Steel 3, I really am, Mr. Harrington. It's just... well, I was wondering if you'd had a chance to read my script." Harrington's eyebrows, bushy caterpillars that appeared to have gotten lost on their way to the invisible zoo, inched up his forehead. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a script. "This thing?" Milo nodded vigorously enough to give himself whiplash. "Best damn script I've read in years," Harrington said. "The heart, the pacing, the dialogue, all A+ exceptional. It's like Mamet and Ephron had a love child, and that little brat was raised by Wes Anderson." Milo sucked back a breath. Was it actually happening? He was going to be able to make the invisible zoo. "So, it's approved." "Approved?" Harrington said with a laugh that could have made your average pack of hyenas file a copyright infringement lawsuit. Not that any hyenas had passed the California bar exam, though several had apparently made it through film school. "Hell no, needs changes. Lots of them. A few big ones, and a few even bigger ones. I've marked them all." He tossed the script onto Milo's desk. "You make those changes, we'll talk again." Milo's face twitched. Of course, Mr. Harrington. I'll get right on them." "Good man," Harrington said. "Oh, and Piven, you should really reconsider SS3. Could be your big break." He turned to walk out. "Poppy." "Mr. Harrington." She nodded. The door banged shut behind him. "Well?" Milo said to no one in particular. At least he didn't say no. A sharp pop echoed through the room, accompanied by the faint scent of artificial strawberry.